Good morning, fellow travellers, and a special welcome to all my new subscribers who found us at a recent show and were very interested in making their own junk journal. This is for you. First of all, a quick look at supplies you will definitely need. Glasses if you need them. I'll just put mine over there because who needs your glasses? Obviously, you'll need papers and, stuff that's around the house. And we'll talk about those in a minute. But in terms of tools and supplies that you'll need, you could probably get away with a pair of scissors if you were very good with scissors. If, like me, you have a bit more trouble than you're used to with scissors, get out of the way. You might be better off with something like this: a cutting mat, a craft knife and a ruler for cutting down packaging into cover sizes, or for tearing papers, for protecting your desk. So yeah, some form of cutting mechanism. You may even have something like this lying around. You're limited with your size, and this is better for paper than for a card, although it'll cut thin card, all right? Oh, look at that. So that's for building. Then when it comes to putting it together, so that usually always involves some form of binding. So you might want to sew it, so you'll need some form of pokey tool to make holes in your paper and books. And you might want to put together, we've got a little sewing kit here, needles, wax for your thread if you want to wax it, paper clips to hold your papers in so they don't move while you sew them, thread of course. We've got all sorts of, I found this lovely old linen thread at the op shop, but you can buy, this is waxed thread from various places. You can use sewing thread, you can use embroidery floss. If you don't want to sew, and I understand if you don't, you can tie things in with ribbon or with elastic. My local $2 shop sells these really nice coloured 2mm elastics. You can also use a sewing machine, and I do that a lot these days because it's easier on my hands. For folding papers, you'll see people often use a bone folder, so it just gives you a nice crisp edge when you're folding. But you can equally use the back of a pair of scissors. So really, you can get away with scissors. Then later on, when it comes to making other things to go in your journal particularly, or if you're joining papers together for pages, you might want glue. And this, maybe this one's easier to read. Not really. Art glitter glue is an EVA glue, which dries clear and very fast. So it's great when you don't want to wait for something like PVA. PVA white glue will also often make your papers buckle. This, not so much. In Australia, go to Bunnings, Boyle's Craft Glue. It's a smellier glue, not water-based, but it's quick drying and it's great. It's really strong. If you just need a little bit of stick, a glue stick works just fine. Okay, let's move on to the exciting stuff. Now, you got decisions to make. Do you want to go tiny, or do you want to go really big? This is one in progress, or somewhere in between. Like, you do need to think about what size you'd like to make. So this is one of the first ones I made, and I didn't even trim it. Look, I was so excited. And I decided to keep this to record things. Woohoo! Found a sultana box in Geordie's bag. So This is one of those little sultana boxes that you put in your kid's lunchbox. And I bound it with elastic so that the signatures which are in here, so each group of papers is called a signature. And I made it really simple. I just grabbed all these lovely old papers that were lying around the house. This is what I told somebody. I love them, junk journals, but won't be making them. I'm too busy with other things. Now look at me. Fell down the rabbit hole. So just all sorts of odd papers. And I stitched these with the sewing machine and then wrapped elastic around the book to hold them in so I can take them out, replace them. Actually, all I do is write down things we thought we'd never say. And all I did was cover this with fabric inside and out and stitched with the machine around the edge. It's amazing what just a normal sewing machine will stitch through if you ask it nicely. So there's a small one made from a sultana box. This one, slightly larger, again with elastic binding. These aren't stitched, these are loose because they're drawing papers. I think this was one of those large Band-Aid box actually. When I was looking after my ailing father, we went through a lot of medical supplies. So it was either pills or a Band-Aid box. I used to make them this size, but I actually find this quite awkward to write in. So I like to work larger. At the moment, Q and I are both working on what will become a grimoire. So we've chosen big books. She chose this one. I chose a similar size one. This had a very small spine, so she's just cut the front and back so that she knows the size that the papers need to be. And she's busily compiling her signatures. So this one, look at this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's going to have 7 signatures, possibly more. The more signatures you have in your book, the, how can I put this, the nicer it behaves. So if you've got a big thick book with just 2 signatures in it, it'll kind of sit up. But if you've got 4 or 5 signatures in it, it'll lay flat and, open more easily. That's been our experience anyway. So the more signatures, the better. And if you like to do what we do and have each signature with a cover page with a special image or text, it's a really nice way to do that. So that's in progress. So this one, obviously, you start with the cover because that tells you what size your pages need to be. Again, here's another option. This was an old book, which, again, no, she didn't change the spine. This had a nice wide spine, and she has. Oh, maybe she did change the spine. I don't think this fairy book was that big. Anyway, she's covered it with fabric. This is texture paste over a stencil. She's made these little edges. This is all going to get painted, so it's messy at the moment. And then, again, building signatures to go in here until you get to the desired. She's got a bit of work to do yet, till you get to the desired fatness. So that's reusing old books. For a start, though, you might like to think about reusing packaging. So something like this will give you something about this size. And when you're cutting it down, like if you look at your boxes, you realise this is kind of a book shape, front, back and spine. Or something with a thinner spine, front and back, or could be cut down into two, and you'd have two smaller ones. Or just start with something this size, and depending on what you want to do, so you could use this, if you just, you know, cut those top flaps and bottom flaps off, or glue them in to strengthen your sides, and just remove this section. I'm not going to do it because I have trouble with scissors, but because of my arthritic hands. Not because I'm clumsy, although maybe a bit. Anyway, so just remove one section, and then you can glue these bits down to strengthen. Or, in my case, at the moment I'm making smaller journals, and I like a soft cover, so I cut it down. I choose the width I want for the spine, because I like to start with my cover. I find if I start with my pages, I end up in a real, I don't know why, I end up in a dilemma about, oh, now I don't know what sort of cover I want. Q, on the other hand, likes to start with her cover, and then, no, sorry, Q likes to start with her pages. I like to start with my cover. She likes to start with her pages, and then she figures out the cover later. Generally, we're kind of blending a bit into each other's style these days. The other sort of cover I really like, and what I do on these ones, but this is the large version, is a stitched cover. So if, like me, you have a big fabric stash and you like to sew, you can machine or slow stitch just onto a piece of, so this is all stitched onto a piece of light cotton underneath, and then I've put interfacing on it because it wasn't quite strong enough, and then I can turn that into something like this. So here's one I prepared earlier. This isn't finished yet, but I've done the sort of the preliminary stages. So these ones I tend to make with 2 or 3 signatures, and I hand stitch these in with thread. Although sometimes I have bound them with this kind of ribbon. So I'll just show you, because that is a really, if you don't like sewing or you're not equipped to sew, this is a really nice, easy way of binding. Obviously I would choose a coordinated ribbon, but you just find the center of your signature. You decide whether you want your knot to be on the inside or the outside. So I'm going to put it on the inside, and then it's simply a matter of tying it, not so tight that it damages the papers, and then you can knot, or if you were sensible and left a bit more thread, you could tie a bow. And then that, when you've got, whoops, wasn't planning to do this, that's what happens on the fly. When you've got all 3 in there, you'd have all 3 strings here, they'd sit nicely on the spine, and that, it behaves perfectly as a book, and it means that whoever uses the book can add or remove pages really simply. So that's a very nice method for attaching your signatures. All right, so those are fabric. Won't be showing this today either. Some other options, shall we just quickly, here is some wallpaper. Wallpaper is beautiful. It's supple, it comes in all sorts of designs, and it makes a really nice journal. Here's one I do, this has 3 signatures, and I've just used up scraps. And because it's so flexible, I don't worry about making a spine on this. I've lined it with calico, and as you use it, it grows and grows, and it just expands to accommodate what you add in. Another simple method. However, today, let's look at the humble paper bag, my favourite. I have made so many paper bag journals because I have an endless supply of paper bags from a friend who shops online. And I'm quite sure everybody else also has ample, endless supplies. And you can turn the Woolies paper bag or any paper bag into a really simple single signature journal very quickly. And we're going to do this today. So these ones I've machine stitched, but you don't need to do that. You can just use glue. I like to leave the edges. It's like evidence of the original substrate. And these ones I've machine stitched the signature in. But this little one, you can see I've just done a slightly fancier closure because I kept, can't even remember, kept the gusset, cut it down, I can't remember. So I machine stitched the decorative papers on, but I hand stitched, and see I've just used this sparkly, I don't know, I think it was for Christmas present wrapping or something, and a little dot of Velcro to hold that closed. And here's one with a bigger Velcro closure. And I think this one I've also machine stitched in. Right, let's get cracking. So all we need is the paper bag. You do need to choose your size. You do need to decide what you're going to build. But for today's little demo, we're going to just make a single signature, so we don't have to worry about a spine. And I'm going to, this is something I've only really figured out recently, what makes the least scrap. If I can find here, come to me, come to me. We use a lot of dyed copy paper and graph paper and all that kind of thing. And what makes the least scrap, if you want to be sensible, is to choose this size, which is half an A4. Or, of course, a quarter of an A4. I'm going to go with half an A4 because I can easily fit that here. You can use your ruler, or you can cheat like I'm going to and use a pencil. So I'll just cut my cover a fraction. I kind of do it just a fraction bigger, top and bottom, but a little bit bigger again on the open side, because that's got to accommodate your papers as you fill them up and it gets a bit fatter. So those are my measurements, which now I can't see because I've got to put my glasses on. All right. And pardon the horrible noise, but I will use this. Now, I love reusing brown paper, so I would never throw that out, despite how much Woolies bag is available. Now, you could fold those over to strengthen this edge. Shall we do that? Let's do that. Let's do that. I haven't ever actually done it with a Woolies bag before, but there's a first time for everything. Now, those of you who started following us recently while Q was up at the KaiCon in Brisbane will know that I had to stay home and mind the cat. Which has been, like, that's my first experience of looking after the cat. And I have to say it went rather well. He's been pretty needy up until the last few days. And if I go out, he's very needy when I get home. But on the whole, we've got on rather well. And what I'm really looking forward to is not having to clean the litter. That is not my favourite part of cat ownership, I have to say. Okay, so that's going to accommodate this. I might just fold this one a little bit. Now, the lovely thing about working with paper is that you can just make it up as you go along and come up with ideas all your own, because it's so low tech, it's so accessible. We've all been playing with it since we were little tiny children. And you might do something like this and think, ooh, can I leave that as a pocket in the back? And yes, you can. But do I want to? Because I'm going to cover this with, look how crooked. Okay. You can make it up as you go along, and you can fix your mistakes as you go along. Sometimes I feel like I spend half my life tidying up the mess I made by doing something hastily. See, that's why a knife and a ruler come in handy. Okay, where was I? Pocket. I'm going to glue this down because we can make a pocket as we build the cover. Cover the cover. You know what I mean. I hope you know what I mean. Okay, here's where something to fold paper with comes in handy as well. Okay, so in my coffee break, I will go and find some images to cover this with. Let's have a little chat about the papers. Now, of course, you can make the papers come out further if you want to, like I did on that initial little book, but it does make it a bit trickier to use. So if you want to put this on a bookshelf, obviously you don't want stuff here. A lot of people put bead dangles on the bottom of their junk journals, and I don't really understand that because I usually have my books like that. I don't mind having some dangly bits on the spine. But having things poking out the top is no problem, usually, because we store our books upright. But I don't much like having them coming out this way either, unless it's just a little tab or, you know, something a bit sturdier made from cardstock. So that being said, the pages that I will put together to go in here, this is pretty much the maximum size I'm going to use. But of course, you can use smaller sizes. So if you wanted to honour the origins of your paper bag journal, you could maybe leave this in. Have that as a page. You could have it as a signature cover, because these are going to get covered, but this will be visible. You might like a torn edge. I don't much like this double seam here, so I am going to tear it against my ruler. And then you have this slightly rough edge as opposed to this sharp edge. So let's do that here too, because this is very wonky. Make it possibly slightly less wonky, or possibly... Ah, there we go. Look. Beautiful. Okay, I'm going to have that as part of my signature. In fact, possibly the front of my signature. Now you might have, I was given these gorgeous, where's one of them, card, these gorgeous cyanotypes from a friend who is also doing the painting class I'm doing, and she gave me this lovely card. So I might use that on the inside, because, you know, anything with a fold is fair game, but equally anything like this you can also use simply by hinging it. So I could, oh look, salt, 5.5 minutes. I could attach it with glue or stitches or a hinge onto here. This is when the process slows down somewhat, because you get to play with all your lovely papers. Where are my papers? Once you start making junk journals, you will end up with something that looks a bit like this. Every piece of paper becomes too precious to throw out. You start to save even the offcuts. These are from class. All the little pieces, all the bits of book page that you think, ooh, that might make something nice. Ooh, ooh, cool, and so on. So let's just choose a selection. Here we go. That's from a very old ledger. Here's some marbled paper we made. Jelly prints, they're always a good choice. Jelly print offcut stuck on old music paper. Bit of old graph paper, old note paper. See, look, I even have my paper bags. Front pages of books that, you know, this has got an inscription on it. I didn't want to throw that out. That'll do from there. Alrighty, so just pull them together and think, okay, fine, let's make this a page. This is a bit from one of Dad's old notebooks. I don't mind that it's all pre-distressed, and it's going to fit nicely within my parameters. Here's another bit of his paper. Now, this is a bit trickier. This is rice paper, or tissue paper almost, from an old hymn book. Oh, blasphemy, I know. See how damaged this is? You wouldn't use that for the as the center unless you reinforced it. And you can reinforce it pretty easily. You can add tape, you can add paper on here, but you have to strengthen that. I am going to get 2 for 1 and put that in like that. And I don't really want the title, I just like that. Ooh, that doesn't tear very easily, does it? Oh, look. There we go. I'm going to keep that because I like that. Then this one, so try and remember to just keep your original page here so you can keep track of what is going to fit and what isn't. That might end up being a little large, like long this way, but you'll see when you build it, this will work on the outside rather than the inside. Oh, look at that, the ledger paper is going to fit. It's going to be a bit big. So I will fold it to fit, and then I will fold this back here. And it can flip out, or it can still flip out, but you can also use that as a hinge to attach. Ooh, let's do that. So here's where I would use the art glitter or the boils. And I'll use the art glitter because it dries fast. I'm going to put that like that. And then, because this was from a friend in art class, so that I remember, I'm actually going to put this here. From Kerry, term 1, 2025 at Gringo. Lovely. And so now this page, when you come to it, you'll have that to open out and turn over. And this is the kind of thing you can just keep playing with all different, I want to say engineering, that's probably a slightly grand term. I also want to use a piece of this. So last week we did, here we go, look, we did block printing. No, not block printing, what did she call it? Monotype, monoprint. And I just didn't quite like that. I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I just quickly did the mushrooms, and that was the ghost print of that. And of course, you know what it's like when you're in a class. I just hated it by the time I'd finished, but I could memorialise it in here. If I fold this, it's a lovely piece of rice paper. If I fold this so I've got one mushroom there, and then, look, it's going to be pretty much the right size. I mean, the mushrooms are going to be pretty much the right size to fit. I might fold that over, and I might tear off the top, because this is a nice usable piece of paper. Oh, see? And now that goes in the scrap box with the smaller scraps. And then I'm also going to tear off this side. More for the scrap box. But, so now I've got my mushrooms. And I'm going to turn this up, and this can be a pocket. And if I turn the top over and glue that, that will reinforce that because it's very flimsy paper. And on this paper, I just, ooh, I'm going to make a mess. I'll just use glue stick. This is so thin that the glue stick will work. Nice. Oh, I just realised, because I'm using all these things from the class I've been doing, maybe I'll use things from class to cover it. To cover this. I could use those hideous mushrooms. Excellent. Okay, that's what we'll do. Okay, now, here we go. When you've got a few papers together, you can start building them. I'm actually thinking, well, that's not from class. Let's leave that one out for a moment. I'm thinking I might have my mushrooms, which I hated so much in class. Now, see, even though this is very thin, it wants to make a buckle, so just crease it better and it'll behave itself. Okay, I want my Woolies bag. Actually, maybe I'll leave it there for now. All right, so I'm going to have my mushroom as the front and back, because why not? And then I've got my Woolies banner. And then I've got my dyed paper. And then we might use a bit of Dad's old, oh, look at that. One side's the right way up, one side's the wrong way up. We'll use that. I might put his papers together. with a bit of that, which would make him laugh because he wasn't at all into churchy things. Will I use that? Oh, see, now I want it to be about my class. But I always include something of Dad's in there, so that can go there. I will include this because I have just finished making that altered book. All right, now you get to see how fat it is and start to have dilemmas about what you want to include. I'm going to go and make a coffee and I'll come back. I'm sure this is getting a little long, so I'll come back having chosen the rest of the papers and the cover sheets and show you how to finish putting it together. Maybe you'd like to go off and choose all of your bits and be ready for the next installment. I really hope this is useful. I love making these. They feel great. I'll see you for part 2 soon.